Angela was 5 when the world faded into black. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, under the blooming mango tree in her family's compound in Enugu. One careless spark from a firecracker, one scream, and then silence, not in sound, but in light. She remembered the smell of burning plastic, the frantic voices, the cold water poured over her. But what stayed with her most was the darkness, deep, permanent, swallowing. The doctor's words came later. She'll never see again. But Angela had already known. Even at 5, she felt her childhood end in the silence of vision. Her parents wept for weeks. Her mother, a school teacher, stopped eating. Her father, once proud and strong, drank quietly at night. People visited with pity, neighbors, aunties, old friends. But Angela didn't want their pity. She wanted her dolls. She wanted the sun. She wanted the colors she barely remembered, yellow, red, green. At night, she would stretch her hands out and imagine the ceiling. Her fingers became her eyes. The world wasn't gone, only hidden. Still, she grew up believing that someday, she'd find a way to see more than others. Not with her eyes, but deeper. The darkness didn't stop her dreams, it sharpened them. Angela became fiercely determined, stubborn in a way that both inspired and scared people. She could feel tension in a room, detect hesitation in someone's voice. By the time she turned 13, she had memorized her school textbooks by sound. At 16, she was admitted into the University of Lagos. She studied business. People called her the blind girl with a vision. But she never liked that phrase. She wasn't blind with a vision. She was a visionary with darkness behind her, and it made her see everything. The world didn't open its arms. She had to break the door down. Internship after internship turned her away. They smiled politely, mumbled apologies, blamed safety protocols. But Angela never begged. Instead, she borrowed a friend's voice, created a spa brand, and sold skincare from her dorm room. One order led to 2. 2 turned to 10. By her final year, she had clients from Victoria Island to Abuja. And none of them knew she couldn't see. She hid it behind voice messages, quick responses, smooth branding. She wasn't hiding out of shame, she just didn't want sympathy. Or limits. After graduation, Angela didn't wait for opportunity. She built it. With her savings and a risky loan, she opened her first spa in Lekki. The smell of lavender, lemon, and mint filled the rooms. She trained staff herself, memorized every scent, every texture. She ran her business like she ran her life, sharp, quiet, and precise. Her blindness made her rely on everything else, tone, warmth, hesitation. She could tell when an employee lied. She knew when a customer wasn't happy, even when they said otherwise. Her brand grew, not just because it was good, but because it felt personal. Soon, Angela opened a second branch in Abuja. Then Port Harcourt. Within 5 years, she had 7 luxury spas across Nigeria. High-end magazines wrote about her. Investors begged to meet her. When they found out she was blind, many were stunned. Some admired her. Others felt awkward. But Angela didn't care for applause. She lived in a minimalist mansion in Ikoyi, surrounded by flowers she couldn't see, art she couldn't admire, and a closet of designer clothes she wore only for texture. Everything around her was beautiful, and yet a part of her felt distant from it all. At night, Angela would sit on her velvet couch, hands folded, and wonder what the moon looked like that evening. Was it full? Was it hiding? She asked her assistant once, and the girl replied gently, "It's beautiful tonight, Ma." But that wasn't enough. Angela wanted to know it herself. She wanted to walk into a room without counting steps. She wanted to laugh at memes without needing descriptions. But most of all, she wanted someone to love her not because she was successful or soft-spoken or inspirational, but because they simply saw her, even without her seeing them. Men came in waves. Some were charming, some poetic. They brought flowers she couldn't admire and compliments she could only weigh by tone. One man, Jude, came with a British accent and promises of building a global empire with her. He quoted scripture, sent daily devotionals, and kissed her hand like royalty. But 3 months in, her Mercedes vanished from the compound. So did Jude. Another man, Maxwell, faked a heart condition, moved into her guest house, and stayed there for 6 months eating her food and blaming his treatment schedule. When she asked about commitment, he vanished too. Angela cried only once after Maxwell left. Not for him, but for herself, for the soft spot that still believed. She told herself she was stupid. How could someone so sharp in business be so gullible in love? But her therapist, one of the few people she trusted, told her, it's not gullibility. It's hope. That word clung to her for days. Hope. It was her weakness and her strength. Each man came with a new disguise. One praised her laugh. Another said he didn't care that she couldn't see. But their mouths always slipped. And Angela always saw. She began to test them. She'd leave a wallet with dollars on the kitchen counter, leave her phone unlocked, or ask casual questions about real estate. Most failed. But the guards at her gate became more protective. Her cook once whispered, "That one no look honest, ma." She laughed it off, but deep inside, she agreed. Still, she kept trying. Dating apps, church retreats, business conferences, hope made her try. But disappointment followed like perfume on old clothes. She sometimes wondered if love was just a story people told to keep warm at night. Still, every time the phone rang or a stranger was kind, her heart tilted slightly, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this one was real. It was a Sunday afternoon when it happened, the day she fell. The sky had cracked open with thunder, and rain began to pour as if the clouds were shedding old grief. Angela had decided to visit the orphanage she sponsored anonymously. She did this often, unannounced visits, donations, inspections. She liked to listen to the children laugh. It reminded her that not all beauty needed sight. But that day, her cane slipped on the slick stone steps. Her foot missed the last edge, and before she could scream, she was tumbling down, pain shooting through her back. The sound of running feet followed. Voices, urgent, panicked. Then a pair of strong hands lifted her gently. She felt the warmth before the words. Easy, the voice said, though not to her, more like to the situation. He didn't ask who she was. He didn't ask if she was hurt badly. Instead, he carried her to a nearby bench, held a towel over her shoulders, and sat quietly beside her as the rain trashed the earth. She heard him breathe, slow, calm. Then, he rose and returned with hot tea. Hold it gently, he whispered. It's full. Angela said nothing. She just held the cup, trembling slightly. There was something about the way he moved, unhurried, sincere. After a few moments, he said, "You slipped." Not as a joke. Not with pity. Just a simple truth. She nodded. "I'm Chike," he added. "Volunteer art teacher." That was all. No questions about her identity. No comments on the car outside. He didn't seem to recognize her, or didn't care. For the next hour, they sat in silence. Only the sound of children playing, rain tapping, and the warmth of tea filled the space between them. Angela came back the next week. Not for the children. Not for duty. But for the voice that made no demands. Chike wasn't there. She felt strangely disappointed. But the following Sunday, he was. He greeted her with a soft "welcome again," and began telling a story to the kids, about clouds shaped like dragons, about a boy who painted the sky with fire. His words danced in the air. Angela sat near the window and listened. The children giggled. She didn't. But inside her chest, something unfamiliar stirred, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. She didn't know its name. From then on, she came weekly. Sometimes she brought snacks, sometimes toys. But always, she stayed until the sun dimmed. Chike never tried to impress her. Instead, he told stories. Vivid, strange, tender. He described sunsets as golden music, oceans as sleeping giants, and laughter as invisible paint. Angela drank every word. In a world where everyone tried to show her love, Chike described it with no agenda. Just presence. Just peace. Her staff noticed the change. She smiled more. Her meetings were shorter. Her nights were softer. Hope had returned, not loud, but steady, like footsteps in sand. Angela never told Chike who she really was. She wore simple gowns to the orphanage, kept her driver parked discreetly, and avoided any signs of wealth. She became Miss Angela, not Madame Ikoyi. Chike spoke to her the same way he spoke to the children, with gentle honesty, not performance. One day, as he painted with the kids, he said he dreamed of hosting an exhibition but couldn't afford a gallery. Angela didn't speak. She only listened. That night, she sat at her grand piano alone and smiled at the thought of colors she had never seen but could now feel. The next week, Chike received a call. An anonymous donor had secured a gallery for him in Victoria Island, fully paid, with press and refreshments covered. He was stunned. He asked around the orphanage. No one knew. Angela pretended to be surprised when he told her. That's amazing, she said softly, her voice calm. Inside, her heart beat fast. For the first time, she was giving without being asked, loving without being noticed. She arranged everything, lighting, music, coverage. Not because she wanted recognition, but because she wanted him to believe in himself the way she now believed in him. On the night of the event, the gallery was full. People marveled at the paintings, bold strokes, vibrant emotion, textures that told stories without sound. Angela sat quietly in the front row, dressed in dark blue silk. Her driver guided her in, and she held her cane like a queen holding a scepter. No one recognized her. But she didn't need applause. She listened. She listened to the gasps, the wonder, the quiet murmurs. Then Chike spoke, shy, humble, grateful. He didn't know who had gifted him this moment. But he said, "Whoever you are, thank you for believing in me." Angela smiled. 3 days after the exhibition, Angela's doctor called. A foreign specialist had arrived in Lagos for only 1 month. He was renowned, known for treating rare optic nerve damage. There was a new procedure, risky but promising. Angela froze when she heard the words. Surgery. Hope. Fear. She hadn't considered medical options in years. Most doctors had said nothing could be done. She had buried the desire to see beneath her empire of success. But now, the thought returned, terrifying, tempting. She paced her living room for hours, her cane tapping like a heartbeat. Could she dare to try? She told Chike about it the next week, her voice trembling. Not because she needed advice, but because she trusted him. Chike didn't try to convince her. He didn't give motivational speeches. He simply said, "If it were me, I'd want to know what the sky looks like again." That sentence lived in her heart for days. She scheduled the consultation. The specialist confirmed her condition was rare, but the new procedure might help. There were no guarantees. No promises. Just a chance. Angela nodded quietly. Her hands shook, but her voice did not. "Let's try," she said. "Let's begin." The weeks that followed were filled with tests, scans, and silent prayers. Angela stayed indoors. She didn't go to the orphanage. Her spouse ran without her, her staff understood. Chike checked on her often. He sent voice notes about the children, about new paintings. He never asked how much she had. Never once tried to impress her. He just showed up, steady, soft, real. On the morning of the surgery, Angela held his hand at the hospital. She couldn't see his face, but she felt his strength. "I'm scared," she whispered. He squeezed her fingers once. Then twice. Then silence. The bandages stayed on for days. Each hour felt like a century. Angela listened to music, avoided the mirror, and told herself not to hope too much. She didn't want to break again. But deep inside, her heart whispered of a life she'd buried: sunsets, flowers, art, mirrors, faces. She imagined Chike's voice, trying to picture what he looked like. Strong hands. Kind eyes. A quiet smile. She built his face in her mind like one of his paintings. And still, she told herself not to expect anything. Some surgeries failed. Some miracles never arrived. But this time, maybe. The morning came. The room was quiet. Only the faint beep of machines and the rustle of curtains. Her doctor stood nearby. "Are you ready?" he asked. Angela didn't answer. She just nodded. Slowly, he unwrapped the bandages. One layer. Then another. The light pierced her closed eyelids. It burned. It flooded. Her head spun. And then, clarity. Blurry at first. Then sharper. The ceiling. The light. The doctor's white coat. And then, a face. His face. Chike. He stood there, nervous, hands folded, eyes red from holding back tears. When Angela saw him, she didn't scream. She wept. She wept not because the surgery had worked. Not because she could now see the world. But because he was the first thing she saw. Not a doctor. Not a parent. Not a nurse. Chike. The man who had helped her when she was broken. The man who never asked for anything. The man who described sunsets and rain. He hadn't changed. He still looked quiet. Still looked kind. And now, her eyes confirmed what her heart had always known: he was real. She whispered his name. He stepped closer. And for the first time, she truly saw everything. The days that followed were a blur of rediscovery. Angela learned light again, colors, depth, motion. Every face was a new emotion. She stared at her staff and smiled with new gratitude. She touched her walls and matched the textures to colors. Her spores were more beautiful than she imagined. The gardens, the mirrors, the fountains, all once invisible, now felt like parts of her returning. She wore clothes with matching colors now. She spent more time in the sun. But what surprised her most was the mirror. For the first time, she saw herself, not perfect, but present. Angela didn't rush back into work. She rested. She painted with Chike. She asked questions about everything: sky, fabric, street lights, shadows. The world looked overwhelming, but he helped her soften it. He never acted like a hero. He never reminded her of the past. He simply showed up, as always. She tried to pay him once. He refused. "You've given me more than I could ever earn," he said. She didn't argue. She just hugged him. They spent time in silence, painting, cooking, walking. She no longer needed to test his loyalty. Her eyes had already proven it. Angela returned to the orphanage 6 weeks after the surgery. The children screamed with joy. Some asked if she could see now. She nodded and cried. The staff clapped. One child held her hand and said, "You're even more beautiful now." She laughed, loud, real, free. Chike stood beside her. He looked shy, like always. That afternoon, she walked into his art room and stared at his paintings. One caught her breath. It was a canvas of a faceless woman holding light in her hands. The background was made of gold and rain. It had no name. But she knew. She walked to him, slowly. Her heels tapped softly on the tired floor. Chike turned and smiled. Angela didn't speak. She didn't need to. For the first time in her life, love wasn't a question. It wasn't a riddle, a performance, or a scheme. It was here, unspoken, unshakable, true. The sky outside shifted gently. The rain had stopped. But something deeper was rising, not a storm, but a quiet tide. Because even though her eyes now walked, Angela knew something else: seeing the world was beautiful. But being seen truly, deeply, and without condition, was the real miracle. Angela thought that gaining her sight would bring only joy. But the world, with all its colors and clarity, also revealed what had once been mercifully hidden. She saw the wrinkles in people's smiles, the tension behind kind eyes, and the way wealth changed conversations. Her assistants, who once spoke with casual familiarity, now stood straighter when she passed. Some of them looked surprised she was attractive. Others looked unsettled. The same people who adored her now watched her like a portrait that had stepped out of its frame. Vision was a gift, but also a burden she never expected. Everything sparkled, the roads, the art, the sky. But Angela also noticed the masks. In meetings, some men stayed too long. At the spa openings, old suitors returned with polished suits and half-sincere grins. One of them, Jude, the man who once stole her Mercedes, sent flowers with a note, "I made a mistake. Let's talk." She burned the note. Her staff asked if they should bar certain guests. She said no. She wanted to see it all, the fake, the faithful, the in-between. If blindness had taught her to feel deeply, sight was now teaching her to discern more sharply. Chike remained unchanged at first. He still visited, still painted, still kept things simple. But Angela began to notice small things, how he looked away when cameras appeared, how he became quiet when people mentioned her wealth. At an exhibition after her recovery, a journalist called her Nigeria's miracle mogul and asked if Chike was her husband. His face froze. He laughed politely, but his shoulders tensed. Angela pretended not to notice. But she did. With sight came suspicion. And with suspicion came fear, not of him leaving, but of finally discovering a crack in the one thing she believed was unshakable. The media storm arrived faster than expected. News of Angela's surgery leaked to the press. Headlines spun stories out of silence. Blind beauty sees again, Spa Queen's secret romance, who is the man behind her miracle? Photos from the orphanage surfaced. Blog articles speculated about Chike, his past, his income, his intentions. Some praised the love story. Others called it a fairy tale scam. Angela refused interviews, but the storm didn't stop. Her mansion's gate saw more cameras than guests. Her phone rang endlessly. She stopped opening social media. Sight, it seemed, had also made her a brighter target. One night, scrolling reluctantly through an online article, she found a photo she had never seen, Chike, younger, standing beside a woman holding a baby. The caption claimed it was his ex-wife and child. Angela's heart pounded. She had never asked about his past. He had never offered. Was it true? Was it clickbait? She zoomed in. The baby looked like him. Her stomach twisted. The next day, she confronted the mirror, really looked. Not at her hair or skin, but at her face. There were questions in her own eyes now. For the first time since the surgery, she was afraid to see. She didn't call Chike immediately. She waited. She watched. She became cold, not rude, just distant. When he messaged, she replied slowly. When he asked if she was okay, she said, "Just busy." But her heart felt like it was balancing on a wire stretched between two buildings. She thought of asking directly. But what would she say? Did you lie to me? Do you have a child? Why didn't you tell me? The silence between them grew. And in that silence, something inside her, something soft, began to wither. She still believed in love. But love without honesty. It happened on a quiet Wednesday. Angela walked into a bookstore in Lekki, unannounced, unguarded. She wanted peace. Instead, she found confirmation. On a local art shelf, she saw a children's book titled Eyes Closed, Heart Open, written and illustrated by Chike. The dedication read, "For Nena. You helped me paint again." Inside was a sketch of the same woman and child from the article. Angela dropped the book. Her fingers trembled. It wasn't just a rumor. He had a family, once. A child. A life he never spoke of. Not even once. Why? What else didn't she know? That night, she called him. Her voice was calm, but clipped. I saw your book, she said. Chike paused. Then quietly admitted, yes. It's about my daughter. She died. Silence. Angela's heart cracked. He added, and her mother, we were never married. She passed too. More silence. He sounded sincere. But the damage was done. Not because he had a past, but because he hid it. Angela had given him her fears, her trust, her first sight. And he had kept a part of himself behind a door she wasn't allowed to open. She thanked him and ended the call. For days, she replayed everything. Every word. Every moment. Was he ever going to tell her? Did he think she couldn't handle the truth? Or worse, did he think it didn't matter? Her mind became a courtroom. Her heart, the witness. She didn't accuse him publicly. She didn't ban him from her life. But she stepped back, not physically, but emotionally. No more visits. No more voice notes. Just silence. A silence not filled with anger, but with caution. Because Angela had learned something deeper than love, trust is a fragile flame. And once it flickers, even the brightest eyes hesitate. Weeks passed. Angela stayed busy, interviews, spa expansions, charity work. She smiled more in public. But inside, she was shrinking. She missed Chike. Missed his voice, his calm presence. But every time she thought of reaching out, the image of that book returned. His past wasn't the problem, it was the hiding. One evening, while sorting donations for the orphanage, she found a painting he once gave her. It was titled Voice of Rain. She studied it with new eyes. There was a girl in the corner, faint, almost erased, holding a brush. A ghost of memory. Her heart cracked again. Chike didn't call. He respected her silence. Or maybe he accepted the distance. Angela didn't know which was worse. She stood in her garden at night, eyes fixed on the stars, wondering how something so vast could feel so lonely. For years, she had feared darkness. Now, she feared clarity. Because seeing meant knowing. And knowing could ruin everything. She questioned herself, was she being unfair? Was she punishing him for a pain he didn't want to reopen? Or was she right to expect transparency from someone who had touched her so deeply? Questions became waves. And she was drowning slowly. Angela's mansion had never felt so quiet. The large halls echoed with the sound of heels and nothing else. Her staff moved carefully, sensing the shift in her mood. They spoke less, watched more. At night, she wandered from room to room, sometimes forgetting to turn on the lights. The irony wasn't lost on her. She could now see, but she was moving through her home like a ghost. The paintings on the walls, once abstract to her, now stared back with hollow beauty. They showed her everything, and yet, none of them reflected how she truly felt inside. Her work no longer sparked joy. She approved spa blueprints, endorsed products, attended glamorous events. But everything felt like a well-lit play with no audience. She posed for photos beside celebrities, smiled through award speeches, and launched new product lines. Yet her soul remained behind the curtain, untouched. Chike's absence was not loud, it was quiet, the kind of absence that eats from the inside out. Angela tried to remind herself she was strong. That she didn't need anyone. But the truth was harder to admit. She didn't want to be needed, she wanted to be wanted, freely and fully. One morning, she passed by the orphanage on her way to a foundation board meeting. She asked the driver to slow down. Children were laughing in the courtyard, throwing leaves into the air. Her heart ached. That place had given her more healing than any hospital. More honesty than any boardroom. But now, she felt like a stranger to it, like she had been cast out not by force, but by her own choices. She wanted to step down and walk in. She wanted to sit by the window and listen to Chike describe the sky again. But her pride held her back. 1 week later, Angela was invited to a new art exhibit in Suraleh. She went without much thought. It was raining, and she wore a simple black dress. She told herself she was just supporting young artists. Nothing more. But when she walked in, the gallery felt strangely familiar, not in its space, but in its emotion. The brushstrokes, the themes, the hidden stories. Her eyes caught a large canvas hung in the back corner. It was called Still, She Saw Me. The colors were muted, grays, golds, and blues. But the center showed a blindfolded woman surrounded by light. She stepped closer. Her heart slowed. The woman had her face, her shape, her hair. But her eyes were covered. Around her stood blurred figures, judges, lovers, liars. But only one figure knelt before her, faceless, hands open. At the bottom corner, scribbled in small letters, was the name, Chike. Angela gasped. The curator noticed. A new anonymous donation, he said. The artist didn't want a name on the wall. She stood there for a long time, unable to move. The painting wasn't just art. It was an apology. A confession. A love letter in colors and shadows. And suddenly, she knew. The next morning, Angela woke before sunrise. She skipped breakfast, skipped makeup, skipped everything. She wore a plain white dress and walked out of the house without her driver. She hadn't done that in years. Her staff looked confused, but didn't stop her. She took a cab to the orphanage. The same gravel road. The same rusted gate. The same sounds of laughter behind the walls. She walked in slowly. Some children recognized her and ran up. Others stared, unsure. But she didn't come for the kids. She came for the quiet man who once helped her sit in the rain. Chike wasn't there. She waited. She sat on the same bench. The sky was cloudy, just like that first day. The air smelled of wet leaves and soap. She waited an hour. Then 2. The matron came out and said softly, "He hasn't been coming much." Angela's heart sank. He said something about space. She nodded. It was fair. She had withdrawn first. She had pulled the silence over them like a blanket. But now, she wanted to tear it off. Before leaving, she gave the matron a note, handwritten, trembling. "Please give him this if you see him again." And she left. Chike came 3 days later. He stood outside her gate in a plain shirt and dusty shoes, holding nothing but the letter she had written. Her security recognized him and called her. Angela didn't wait for makeup. She walked to the entrance, barefoot. When their eyes met, nothing needed to be said. They stood there, in silence, as the city moved around them. Then she stepped forward and placed her hand on his chest. "I see you," she whispered, not as a statement of sight, but of recognition. He smiled, his eyes wet. That moment, soft, slow, and sacred, became their true beginning. Angela didn't propose. Chike didn't ask. They simply decided. One morning, they returned to the orphanage, the place where light had returned in ways no surgery could replicate. There was no gold, no limousine, no orchestra. Just a small ceremony under a mango tree, the laughter of children as background music, and 2 people who had nothing to prove except the truth of what they felt. Angela wore no veil. She had nothing to hide anymore. As she said her vows, her voice cracked, not from nerves, but from relief. She had finally seen everything. And she had chosen love.